"Mom, I need you to step outside." That was the first thing the deputy said. He didn't ask, he ordered. His hand hovered just above his belt, near his holster, like he expected trouble. Behind him, red and blue lights pulsed through the Georgia pines, painting the front of my weathered cabin like a crime scene. And standing beside him, with her clipboard and smug little smirk, was Karen Langford, the queen of the Cedar Ridge OA. She thought she'd won. She thought she could drag a 67-year-old man off the land he had built with his own two hands. Because she had rules. Because she had a title. Because she had power. But what she didn't have was the truth. And as I looked out past the porch swing I carved myself, toward the lake that mirrored the morning sun like silver glass, I simply said, "You might want to call your supervisor, or better yet, the county commissioner. This cabin's mine. In fact, this whole county is mine." The deputy blinked. Karen froze. And that's when the story truly began. "My name is Arthur Bennett. I'm 67 years old, a retired land developer, and the last man in Talpine County you'd want to push too far. I don't raise my voice. I don't throw punches. But I do keep records. And I build everything to last. Back in the day, I poured foundations for highways, hospitals, even the county courthouse. But when my wife passed away, I walked away from contracts and steel beams and turned inward. I bought a piece of wild land off the edge of Lake Lindley. Just pine and silence back then. And with my own hands, I built this cabin, board by board, beam by beam. No crews, no permits, no OA, just a man, a hammer, and a memory. Fast forward 25 years. The quiet faded, developers came, investors followed. And then came Cedar Ridge, a shiny gated community 3 miles up the lake, with stone walls, imported trees, and rules thicker than a church Bible. At first, they left me alone. Then the letters started. "Dear cabin occupant," it read, "as your residence now falls within our updated jurisdiction, you are expected to comply with Cedar Ridge HOA appearance and access standards." I laughed when I read it, jurisdiction. My property predated their ZIP code. I didn't respond. That's when the real pressure began. Citations taped to my gate for unpermitted structures. Drone flyovers, recording my dock and deck. Volunteers walking their dogs, too close to my boundary line. Then came the visits. Karen Langford herself, tall, stiff, the kind of woman who wielded a clipboard like a weapon, showed up one afternoon. She didn't knock, just stood at the base of my steps, flanked by 2 OA lackeys. "Mr. Bennett," she said, "your non-compliance will not be tolerated. We are escalating the matter to law enforcement. And that brings us back to the present. A sheriff's deputy, a morning sun, a man on his porch with a coffee, and Karen convinced she had cornered me. I didn't stand up. I didn't need to. I let the silence stretch until the deputy shifted on his feet. "You sure about that, sir?" he asked. I reached slowly to the little table beside my chair and picked up a thin brown folder. Inside, a copy of my original land deed from 1999. A zoning map showing my cabin sits outside any A-defined perimeter. A notarized affidavit from the county office confirming that my property and the roads leading to Cedar Ridge are legally mine. I handed them over. The deputy read them, flipping slowly. His jaw moved, but no words came out. Karen, hovering behind him like a shadow, hissed, "What is this? This can't be right." But it was, and I'd been waiting for this moment. You see, I knew Karen. Not personally, but by type. She didn't claw her way to HOA presidency for the betterment of her community. She did it for power. The kind of brittle power that only works when no one dares say, I said no. With documents, with dates. With silence that cracked louder than shouting ever could. The deputy finally looked up. "Sir, Mr. Bennett, I believe there's been a mistake." I nodded. "That's why I said you might want to call your supervisor." He stepped away to radio in. Karen stood stiff, staring at me like I had just undone her entire little kingdom with a single breath. And she was right. But what neither of them knew was that I had only just begun. Karen Langford didn't back down. She wasn't the type to retreat when her ego took a hit. Not after being embarrassed in front of a county deputy and a man she tried to evict from his own front porch. No, people like Karen didn't walk away. They regrouped. They schemed. They escalated. 3 days after that standoff, a new letter arrived, this one marked Fennell Warren G. It was typed in all caps, thick margins, and stapled with an attachment that looked like an official ordinance. It wasn't. The heading read Cedar Ridge A Visual Harmony Code, Section 22B. And the first line, "Occupants must immediately remove or alter any structure deemed out of sync with neighborhood aesthetics as determined by the board." It was nonsense. My porch swing. Out of sync. My pine log railing. not consistent with colonial symmetry. The fire pit I built for my grandkids. Safety concern. I laughed, poured some sweet tea, filed the letter, but Karen wasn't done. One morning, while sanding a cedar board on the back porch, I noticed something overhead, a faint buzz. I looked up. A drone. Black, unmarked, hovering just above treetop level. It tilted slightly, like it was peering in. I followed its flight. It circled once, then disappeared back toward Cedar Ridge. An hour later, another letter. This one had grainy photos. My backyard, my boat, my garden. Attached were infractions, including non-regulated vegetation growth and dock misalignment. Again, nonsense. But it was getting worse. The next week, 2 HOA volunteers, a couple in matching vests walking golden retrievers, began wandering closer and closer to my property line. One even paused by my gate and took a photo of my mailbox. They didn't wave, didn't speak. They didn't have to. That camera was louder than words. Then came Memorial Day weekend. My daughter Sarah, her husband Chris, and their 2 boys, Luke and Evan, came to visit. We grilled ribs, tossed bean bags in the yard, watched the boys skip stones across the lake. It was the kind of weekend you hold on to when the world starts spinning too fast. That Sunday around 4:00 p.m. we heard gravel crunching. I turned. A black SUV barreled down the road, kicking up dust like a storm. Doors flew open. Karen stepped out first, clipboard in hand, lips pursed so tight they nearly disappeared. Behind her, Doug and Janice, her 2 ever-present enforcers. They wore matching Cedar Ridge HOA vests and looked like they were auditioning for a low-budget police drama. Karen didn't say hello. She didn't look at my grandkids. She didn't ask for permission. She pointed toward the dock and said, "You're trespassing. This property is under HOA review and you are in direct violation." Chris stepped forward. "Mom, with all due respect." I raised a hand to stop him. I wasn't going to let her drag my family into this. I walked calmly down the steps, met her eyes. "Karen," I said, "you're mistaken. This cabin is not under your jurisdiction." She sniffed. "I've already called the sheriff. Let them sort it out." Then she turned, shouted something to Doug about documenting visual disorder. I didn't argue, didn't yell, didn't threaten. I walked back up to my porch, poured a glass of tea, sat back in my chair and waited. 20 minutes later, the sheriff cars arrived. 3 of them, sirens off but lights spinning slow and silent. Same young deputy from before. This time, he walked slower, more hesitant. He didn't even reach for his holster. Instead, he stopped at the foot of the steps. "Mr. Bennett," he said, "may I speak with you?" I nodded, handed him the same folder, the same documents. He radioed dispatch, and this time his face changed. He turned back. "Sir, records show you own over 800 acres here, including the access road." Karen's face drained, but her ego didn't. She marched up, tight-voiced, saying, "That's outdated. I'm filing for a jurisdictional reclassification." I just smiled. "That'll take at least a year, Karen. And while you're chasing paperwork, I'll be sitting right here, enjoying my tea." But it was the next morning when I realized just how far she was willing to go. The sun hadn't even crested the trees. Birdsong barely started. Snap. That's not a bird, not a squirrel. Something heavier. I peeked through the blinds. Karen, standing at the gate, wearing her OA vest, hair sprayed stiff, clipboard in one hand and bolt cutters in the other. She looped a thick iron chain through my gate, snapped a giant brass padlock shut. Doug stood nearby, holding a thermos, trying not to look guilty. I stepped outside. "Karen," I called. "What do you think you're doing?" She didn't flinch. Her voice, syrupy sweet. "Good morning. Per HOA Ordinance 22B, your property is now restricted pending code enforcement review." "There is no Ordinance 22B, I replied. "And this isn't OA land." She smiled like she'd already won. "The board voted unanimously last night. You're within our newly mapped zone, and your appeal window has closed." I stood there, barefoot, silent, fists clenched. She pointed at the lock. "The gate stays shut for everyone's safety until a legal resolution is reached." Then she winked. "Call someone if you think you're allowed to be here." And she walked away, gravel crunching under her pointy little shoes. I didn't stop her, didn't shout. I walked back inside, opened a drawer beneath my bookshelf, pulled out a thick folder, sealed in plastic. Inside every deed, every zoning map, every mineral rights record. Not just for this land, but for the roads they used to get to their homes. She just padlocked a man inside land she didn't realize he legally owned, from the tree line to the lake and beyond. And that was her biggest mistake yet. Karen thought the war was still hers to win. After all, she controlled the newsletter, the budget, the board, the bylaws. But what she didn't control was the truth, and that truth was about to blow the doors off her little empire. Right inside the very clubhouse she built with stolen influence. It was a Thursday evening when I walked into the Cedar Ridge HOA meeting. I hadn't attended a single one since they broke ground 5 years ago. I didn't care about their holiday decoration timelines or their arguments over mailbox height. But tonight wasn't about Christmas lights. Tonight was about exposure. I shaved, put on a clean blazer, and stepped into their chandelier-lit room like a ghost from their collective past. People stared. Doug, Karen's loyal lapdog, nearly choked on his bottled water. A couple of board members exchanged glances, suddenly very interested in their phones. And at the center of it all, Karen Langford stood up. "Mr. Bennett," she said sharply, clutching her leather folder, "this is a private meeting. HOA members only." I smiled. Calm, centered, deadly. "I'm aware," I said. "But seeing as your runoff pipe is currently trespassing on my land, I believe I've earned a seat at the table." The room went still. I didn't sit. Instead, I walked to the podium, placed a 94-page binder down with a soft thud that somehow echoed louder than any shout. "This," I said, "is a notarized compilation of every violation committed by the Cedar Ridge HOA over the last 12 months. Surveillance without consent, unlawful environmental incursion, fake citations, false structural complaints, and, most recently, an illegal condemnation order based on doctored photos, filed by your president, Ms. Langford." The gasps were audible now. People leaned forward. One woman whispered, "Wait, she what?" Karen's face turned stone, but her eyes betrayed her wide, blinking fast. "This is harassment," she shouted. "You can't just barge in here and—" I didn't barge, I interrupted. I was invited, by the law, because every document in this binder has already been submitted to the county clerk and to Sheriff Cole's office. And just like that, I stepped back. But I wasn't alone. From the back of the room, Ellie, my lawyer, stepped forward. She held in her hand the mineral rights deed, the one I acquired 2 years ago, giving me control over the land beneath their entire HOA. Then came Roger, the county commissioner, flanked by 2 aides and holding a public statement, already signed and notarized. And behind him 3 Cedar Ridge residents, former allies of Karen, now witnesses against her. They approached the mic one by one. Mrs. Porter, trembling but firms. I was fined $200 because I had a ceramic chicken planter on my porch. When I refused to pay, Karen doubled it, said I was deteriorating the aesthetic standard. A young father stood next. She told me my son couldn't fish off our dock without a community fishing pass. We've lived here for 6 years. She threatened to report us for trespassing on our own lakefront. The third was a quiet man in his 60s. He cleared his throat. She said my wind chimes were a noise violation. But really, it was because I voted against her pet project, the 60,000 clubhouse mural. She threatened to revoke my access to the boat ramp. By the time they finished, Karen looked like she'd been stripped bare. Her hair, perfectly sprayed, now limp with sweat, her grip on the folder trembling. I wasn't angry, I didn't gloat, because this wasn't about vengeance. It was about truth. Then Mayor Troy, an old friend, stood. He faced Karen directly. "Is there anything you'd like to say, Ms. Langford?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "This is a personal vendetta?" she muttered. "He's trying to destroy everything we've built." Troy raised an eyebrow. "And yet you condemned a man's cabin using falsified engineering reports, filed federal complaints without evidence, and engaged in environmental tampering without permits." The room froze. Karen looked down. I knew what was happening inside her. That burning collapse, when power slips through your fingers like water, when the rules you wrote no longer apply. And just when the room thought it was over, I pulled out one last paper, a legal freeze order, effective immediately. I announced, all development, construction, and land transactions within the Cedar Ridge OA jurisdiction are suspended, until an official investigation concludes. Doug gasped. Someone in the back dropped a pen. Karen lunged forward. Hand outstretched. I turned to Troy. "Can I?" He smiled. "He can?" The room erupted, half in disbelief, half in applause. Karen stumbled out like a storm-drenched bird, folder clutched to her chest, eyes wide with fury and fear. But I wasn't chasing her, because this wasn't about her anymore. It was about every homeowner who ever felt small under the weight of a rulebook. About every veteran who got told their flag was too big. Every grandparent fined for having a swing set in their backyard. And this was just the beginning. Because some empires don't fall with fire. Some collapse under truth. Some people lose quietly. They retreat, lick their wounds, and move on. But not Karen Langford. No, she wasn't just bruised. She was humiliated. Her power was slipping, her followers crumbling, and worst of all, her secrets had been dragged into daylight. But instead of reflecting, she exploded. And when people like Karen feel cornered, they don't walk away. They burn the whole damn barn down. It started just 2 nights after the HOA meeting. Literally, I was fast asleep, boots by the door, thermos by the bed, my old hunting knife under the floorboard where it always stayed. But something pulled me from sleep. A sound, sharp, violent, not a gunshot, worse. A crackling roar. I threw the covers off, grabbed a flannel, ran to the front porch. And there it was. My front gate engulfed in flames. The same gate she padlocked days earlier. The fire snapped and spit like it had a grudge of its own. Orange light danced through the trees. Smoke spiraled skyward, thick and oily. The acrid scent hit me like a punch gasoline. This wasn't an accident, it was a message. And I received it loud and clear. But what Karen didn't know was that my wildlife cams, the same ones I installed during our friendly dispute, had captured every second of it. 2 angles. Full license plate, 1 figure in a hoodie, pouring from a red can lighting a match. By the time I called 911, I already had the footage exported to a USB drive. Sheriff Cole arrived 20 minutes later. His boots hit the gravel hard. He didn't say much, just paced the scene, jaw tight, nostrils flared. He crouched down near the scorched gate, rubbed a finger in the blackened dirt. "Accelerant," he muttered, "smells like diesel. Maybe mixed with kerosene." I nodded and handed him the drive. He raised a brow. "You got a camera on this?" "No," I said. "I've got 2. He let out a low whistle. Smart man. But the real punch came the next morning. I was pouring coffee, trying to push the image of flaming pine needles from my mind. When I heard gravel crunch outside, I looked up. A silver SUV, not Karen's, not local plates, and not someone I recognized. Outstepped a man in a black ball cap, mid-40s, face half hidden under sunglasses, shoulders squared with intent. He wasn't holding anything at first, but when he stepped fully onto the dock, I saw the gun. Not raised, not aimed, but present, visible. He stood there like he owned the lake, like he was waiting for a green light. I didn't panic, didn't reach for anything. Just stepped out onto the porch barefoot and calm, voice low but steady. "Morning?" He turned, slowly. "You Bennett?" I nodded. "Who's asking?" He shifted the gun slightly, still low. "Friend of a friend. Said you've been stirring things up." I didn't respond. He took another step forward. "Said you took down a woman trying to build something good. Said you ruined her life." So Karen's Hail Mary was a hired threat. I looked at him, hard, right through the sunglasses. "Did Karen send you?" He hesitated. That pause said more than any answer could. I took 1 step sideways. It was casual, but it brought me within reach of the firewood pile where, tucked beneath the logs, sat a silent alarm button, rigged straight to Sheriff Cole's direct line. My thumb brushed the casing. "You don't want to do this?" I said. "I have to," he muttered. "She already paid me half." "For what?" I asked. "Intimidating an old man, shooting someone on his own property. You know that's a felony, right?" He stepped onto the gravel path, gun still down, but closer now. I pressed the button. Click. Signal sent. Now I just had to buy time. "There are 3 trail cams recording you right now," I said. "1 already caught your license plate. Another's streaming to the sheriff's phone. The 3rd caught the fire." He froze. "You're bluffing?" "No," I said. "I'm a landowner. I don't bluff. I document." And just like that, I heard it, the low roar of tires. 2 sheriff cars came flying down the road, lights off but fast. Within seconds, the man dropped his weapon, backed away, and hit the dirt. The deputies cuffed him on my dock. He kept shouting something about immunity, about being promised protection. He was sweating, panicked, confused. But me, I just stood there, watching, arms folded, heart steady, because I knew this wasn't about me anymore. This was about how far Karen was willing to go. And she had finally crossed a line she couldn't uncross. By that afternoon, the headlines hit, "Oh, President linked to attempted armed assault," and Karen Langford. She was nowhere to be found. But the law was coming. And this time, it had a warrant. Karen Langford had spent years building her empire. 1 rule, 1 fine, 1 intimidation tactic at a time. But empires built on fear rarely fall in flames. They fall in silence, paper by paper, vote by vote. And Karen's fall was almost poetic. 2 days after the fire, 1 day after the failed intimidation with the armed stranger, And just hours after she tried to sue me for harassment and property interference, I received the real letter. A thick envelope from the Talpine County Development Board. It read, "Due to confirmed violations of ethics, permit law, and misuse of county resources, the Cedar Ridge Homeowners Association charter is officially revoked, effective immediately. All authority is dissolved, all members are hereby removed." Just like that, it was over. The HOA was dead. News spread like wildfire. Karen's house was placed under legal hold pending multiple investigations. The HOA's community funds were frozen, her power gone. Worse yet, her own board members began resigning. One by one, I watched them slink away. No press statements, no farewell speeches, just resignation letters and shame. But Karen, she still clung to her fantasy. She filed that ridiculous small claims lawsuit against me, hoping I get distracted, tied up, rattled. I didn't. Because just as her last chess pieces fell, I got a call that would make every HOA in the state stop and listen. Senator Marcus Hale. I hadn't spoken to him in years, not since I helped his team with a zoning project near Denton. But he'd seen the news, the fire, the arrest, the cameras, the trial by truth. And now, he had a proposal. "Arthur," he said, "we're pushing a new piece of legislation. A bill to protect landowners from HOA overreach, false condemnation, and zoning abuse. We want your story to open the hearing." I was stunned. "You're serious?" "It's a heart attack," he replied. "You stood up when no one else would. Now let's make sure no one else has to." The next few days moved fast. I sent in every document, every photo, every drone shot, complaint property map, and evidence packet. They called it the Bennett Landowner Protection Act, and it was backed by 5 senators, 12 mayors, and hundreds of rural homeowners who had followed my story online. The internet exploded. Veterans, widows, teachers, all sharing their own stories of HOA harassment. I never asked for that, but it came, because one man standing up gave others the courage to stand too. As for Karen, her house was seized to cover legal fees. Her name became a cautionary tale. Her resume a punchline. The last I heard, she was living out of state, applying for jobs she wasn't qualified for, blaming everyone but herself. I didn't celebrate. I didn't toast. Because what I won wasn't revenge. What I won was clarity and peace. I remember sitting by the lake one morning, rocking gently, cup of tea in hand, watching the wind ripple across the water. My wife used to say, "Power isn't what you take. It's what people trust you to protect." And this land, it still belonged to the man who never left, who fought not with anger, but with proof, who didn't scream, but documented, who didn't destroy, but revealed. The Cedar Ridge HOA tried to become a kingdom, but they forgot something critical. Land doesn't bend to politics. It answers only to truth. I thought it was over. I truly did. The HOA had collapsed. The lawsuits had failed. The community had turned. Even the state Senate had called me to testify. But Karen Langford wasn't done. Because some people don't know how to lose. They only know how to escalate. And when power slips through their fingers, they lash out with whatever's left. Even if that means turning to something darker. It started just before sunrise. The lake was still under a blanket of mist. I was lacing up my boots when I noticed a shadow on the dock, not moving, just standing there. A man, mid-40s, cap pulled low, sunglasses on, a jacket zipped high. He didn't wave. He didn't speak. But I saw it, glinting in his right hand. A gun. I stepped out onto the porch slowly, barefoot, heart steady. "Morning," I called. He turned, stiff and deliberate. "You Bennett." "I am." He took one step forward. "I'm here for someone. Said you caused a lot of trouble. Said you ruined her life." The fog might have blurred his face, but his words were sharp, cold steel under a layer of ash. Karen, she'd hired someone. A last-ditch effort to intimidate. Or worse. "I don't want to do this," he muttered. She already paid me half. I didn't flinch. I just shifted sideways ever so slightly, closer to the woodpile where a black box was hidden. Inside that box, a silent panic button wired straight to Sheriff Cole's personal line. I eased my hand behind me. "You're trespassing," I said calmly, "and armed." "I was told you'd fold fast," he said. "You're just some old guy with a porch and a story." I pressed the button. Click! Signal sent. "You know," I said, "there are 3 trail cams recording this moment. One already caught your plate. One streaming live to the sheriff's office. And the third? It's got you in 4K, friend." He froze. "You're lying." "No," I replied. "I'm just prepared." That's when I heard it. Gravel crunching, no sirens, no lights. Just 2 sheriff units flying down the road like ghosts. Before he could react, they surrounded him. Drop the weapon. He did. He dropped to his knees and raised his hands. Cuff it. Read his rights. Hauled off, still shouting about immunity and just doing a job. I stood there on my dock, arms folded, watching the fog lift. Karen's last move had failed. The next day, headlines exploded. Former HOA president linked to armed threat against landowner, fire fraud, and federal obstruction. Karen Langford under investigation. She was arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit assault, falsifying legal documents, obstruction of a federal investigation. Her mugshot went viral, and her story became a warning. As for me, I testified before the state senate. The Bennett Landowner Protection Act passed with overwhelming support, and letters poured in from people I'd never met thanking me for standing my ground. Not with fists, not with rage, but with proof, with patience, with principle. You see, Karen tried everything to control what wasn't hers. She built her kingdom on intimidation, and in trying to silence me, she exposed herself. She lost her home, her title, her control. But I kept the one thing that mattered: the land, the lake, the porch, the quiet, the legacy. If you ever pass through Tall Pine County and you see a quiet cabin by the water, with a dog sleeping on the porch and an old man sipping tea, come say hello. I'll tell you how one HOA fell, how justice stood tall, and how the land always remembers who stood for it when no one else would. Because in the end, the wind will blow and power will pass. But truth endures. If you've ever faced HOA abuse or dealt with someone trying to take what's rightfully yours, share your story in the comments below. We want to hear from you. Remember to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next powerful story. And if you ever find yourself passing through Tall Pine County, stop by that quiet cabin by the lake. There might be an old man on the porch with a warm cup of tea, ready to tell you how justice stood tall when no one else dared to. Because sometimes, all it takes is one voice that doesn't back down.